feature was also integral in boss fights, as it was usually the easiest way to home in on a boss's weak point, thereby making it much easier to defeat them than in prior Zelda games, where you would have to guess at where their weak point was, though it was usually pretty obvious in the other games. The game also allows Link to equip up to 3 items at a time, each one mapped to one of the C buttons on the face of the controller. This made the game far less monotonous because it meant you didn't have to pause as often in order to switch out your weapons, and it also led to some pretty cool combination attacks. Overall, Link's inventory was also given a major overhaul, and spans several screens in this game. It features several new items such as the Megaton Hammer and the Magic Beans, along with many recurring old items from prior games such as the bow and arrow, the boomerang, and of course the hookshot. But of course, the biggest feature of this game is its time travel element. You see, once Link discovers the Master Sword for the first time, he can't initially wield it because he's too young to do so, and so he's put into a deep sleep for 7 years. But during those 7 years, Ganondorf completely conquers Hyrule, turning it into a desolate wasteland, pretty much the equivalent of the Dark World in A Link to the Past. And so Link is forced to seek out the 6 sages, who will apparently be able to help him defeat Ganondorf for once and for all. Add to it, Link must also travel back and forth between his childhood and his adulthood using the pedestal in the Temple of Time in order to solve some time-related puzzles that will give him access to the later dungeons. Now, while time actually is a theme in this game, it's not a very large theme that some people seem to think it is. Yes, there is an element of time travel, and of course there is the day and night system of the game, wherein if you don't get to a town by the time night comes around, you have to fight zombies until morning. But there are several other different themes in this game that are much more relevant than time. Now, I've already mentioned exploration once during this review, and that's a theme that pretty much goes without saying in any Zelda game. But I believe that the biggest theme of all in this entire game is the theme of music. Link receives an ocarina very early on in the game, and he's told right off the bat that it has special magical properties. Later on in the game, he can begin to learn songs, and each of which has a purpose that is distinctly magical. The power of music in this game is pretty overwhelming. The first song that you learn, Zelda's Lullaby, is actually one of the most powerful songs in the entire game. It's also the one that you play the most over the course of it. The amount of songs that you learn is pretty impressive too, and each song, like I said, has a specific purpose, whether it be communicating with Sarah, his childhood friend, summoning Epona, his horse, later on in the game, or opening up a specific temple he's trying to get into, usually with the help of Sheik, who teaches him these songs later on. It also helps that every single one of these songs is not only memorable, but beautiful to boot. Of course, the rest of the music in the game is just as impressive. I mean, what would you expect from a Zelda game at this point in time? It's also worth noting that this is the first time Link is given a distinctive voice in a Zelda game. While he doesn't talk, even in text in this game, his various grunts, yells, and groans are still pretty evident in this entire game, and it gives him a lot more personality. Now the last thing I'm going to address is the final battle between Ganondorf in this game. I'm not going to give any major plot spoilers or anything beyond the fight itself, but I feel I must address this because many fans feel that this is without a doubt the greatest final battle in the history of the series. I'm not going to deny that it is, in fact, one of the best boss battles in any video game ever, but I honestly don't feel it deserves the title of the best final battle in any Zelda game, for a reason I will get into in a later review. But the fight does set up Link's relationship with Ganondorf very well, showing how he utilizes the Triforce of Power, and also gives Zelda plenty of moments to shine. First off, this is the first time in the series that Ganondorf is fought in his humanoid form. Yes, in prior games, it was hinted at that he used to be human, but then transformed into a beast, but the beast form is the only form that you meet and fight at the end of the game. Like I mentioned previously in this review, you do have several run-ins with Ganondorf prior to the final battle with him, but this is the first time that you fight him when he's in his pure human form. It's a very powerful human form, but a human form nonetheless. One of the biggest surprises of this final battle is that after you beat Ganondorf's human form, the game goes ahead and pulls a Metroid ending on you by forcing you to escape from a collapsing tower within a strict time limit. If you fail, then you have to fight Ganondorf all over again and watch people get crushed, which is never fun. In this game, this is probably where Zelda gets her crowning moment, because without her, you wouldn't be able to escape. She follows you down the tower and opens up the barred doors that keep you from escaping. Even after you defeat Ganondorf and are confident that he will never bother anybody ever again, this game is not done throwing plot twists at you just yet. It is at this point that Ganondorf completely accesses the Triforce of Power, and becomes his beast form, Ganon. This is the crowning moment of the entire game, and he even forces Link to fight without the Master Sword for the first half of the fight. I won't spoil anything more in the fight for you, but suffice it to say that it is pretty damn awesome. And the last thing I'd like to note is the fact that once again I am doing this so that I can compare it to a later game in the series, which I believe is more deserving of the title of Best Final Battle in a Zelda Game. Again, I'm not denying that this is an awesome final fight, and truly very, very epic, but I believe there is one that has been really panned and has been generally overlooked by pretty much everyone. And so ends our look at the very first three-dimensional Zelda game on the Nintendo 64. However, unlike the Super Nintendo era, we did receive a second Nintendo 64 Zelda game. And let me tell you, it's definitely one that's worth talking about. Oh really? Well, I'm so glad I put up with you for the entire game just so you could tell me that in the final battle.